What's up, guys? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review. My name is Rob, and today I'm going to gush about some Bayonetta. Alright, so it is Sunday, October 26th, and you know what that means. That means that for 2 days, Bayonetta 2 has been out, released, on shelves, and probably inside of the Wii U that most of us own, because that game has been one of the most highly anticipated games of the year. I have been freaking dying for this game. I was a huge fan of the first. I've made quite a few videos over the last few weeks talking about Bayonetta. I did a Let's Play of the demo, preparing for the potential sales, talking about the amazing reviews that started coming out the last few weeks leading up to the game's release. And so, yeah, here we are 2 days in, and the game's finally been out. I've been playing the hell out of it. I'm sure a lot of you guys have too. So as much as I want to hear what it is you guys have to say, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think of Bayonetta 2. So like I said, I was a huge fan of the first game. I've brought that up a few times on Rule of Two Review. I played through it 2 times and almost a third time, but probably halfway through on that third playthrough. So I've spent a lot of time with the first Bayonetta. It is probably my favorite straight-up action game, stuff that's in the vein of things like Devil May Cry and games of that nature. I think that it just plays so wonderfully. It's very fluid, very smooth. Bayonetta's a great character. She's extremely sexy. The controls, the way her moves are just put together, which has to do with the mythos behind the character in the universe of her being a witch, an Umbran witch, and all this kind of magical heaven versus hell sort of plight and plot that the game kind of has to do with. And it's just executed so perfectly well, both in her character as well as her moveset. And Bayonetta 2, finally out for the Wii U, very controversial because of the whole exclusive to Nintendo kind of thing. I've talked about that to death. I'm sure you know the details, so I won't really get into that. But Bayonetta 2 came out trying to promise to be the better game. And after all these amazing reviews and now the couple of days that I've been playing it, I can absolutely agree that it is the better game. What's kind of tough to put together is whether or not I'm surprised or not surprised by this. I mean, you have to think that when it comes to gaming, a lot of times you want to think maybe the sequel can be better. It gives them time to improve on the mechanics of the first game, make the story a little bit deeper by expanding on the lore that the first game would have put in place, kind of do more things with the gameplay, find the areas that didn't quite work so well the first time around and make them better. That doesn't always work out with sequels, but with this one was one I was very specifically thinking was going to work out this way, mostly because Platinum Games is such a wonderful studio, the guys behind Bayonetta, the series. And I just knew that they were spending so much time with this game, that they just have such a love and appreciation of this world and this franchise, and especially the character of Bayonetta, that there was just no doubt that it was going to be great. The other cool influence is that we know that they've been working very closely with Nintendo on this. Early on in the development of the game, when they realized that they weren't going to get the proper backing from Sega or Sony or Microsoft to complete this game and actually get it published, that is when Nintendo, snuck in behind the scenes, scooped up the franchise, said, hey, this is our game, we're going to pay for it, it's exclusively on the Wii U, on our next console at the time. Since then, after the reveal of the game that it's exclusive to the Wii U, and in the last 2 years, leading up to this game finally releasing, some of the information coming out of Platinum Games has been really positive in regards to how they've worked with Nintendo. They very famously have said that working with Nintendo has opened up a whole new range of possibilities that they were able to do with this game. And actually, one of the really cool quotes I remember reading about this coming from someone at Platinum Games in the past mentioned how when they were, and I don't remember the exact details or actual quote itself, but basically, to paraphrase it, somebody was saying, we would have this great idea, working on this, we would show it to Nintendo, and they would say, hey, that's really cool, we like that idea, but maybe try doing it this, or this way, and see how that works out. And they would say, wow, that's so cool, we never would have thought of that. And then Platinum Games would implement that idea or work with Nintendo on that idea to combine it with what they were doing, and it ultimately made for the better game. And again, the reviews and the reception for this game obviously showed the truth of that, and I just think it's so cool that they had such a great working relationship with Nintendo, and they took the sequel to a game that was already almost the game of the year when it released in 2010 and made an even better game, and so coming back to the main point, like I said, I've now been playing it for a couple days, and just, damn, it has literally exceeded my expectations. Even after the reviews, when I was like, wow, these reviews exceed my expectations, so now my expectations are through the roof. This game really is going to be as good as we all thought and as I was hoping. And so when I came home with the game, I was like, man, I know it's going to be great, but can it still seem like the 9.5 or perfect 10 that I've been seeing? Like, can it still be that good, especially with how good I thought the first game was? And yeah, it really is that good. I mean, I can only kiss the behind of this game because it is just so freaking wonderful. So I'm very much loving the design of Bayonetta. This isn't so much important to the game itself, but I do have to say that I really like the short hair. I think that I really like the way her character is actually being implemented. I guess the way she's acting throughout the story, which this game is very, very story heavy. That's something I want to talk about in a minute. But she seems just a little bit more calm and reserved, personality-wise. Some of the over-the-top flamboyant sexuality and stuff, which I am not going to lie, I think that stuff is great. It's very welcome in my Bayonetta game. That's just as crazy as ever, if not more so, and that, again, is a fine thing. But as far as her character, and when she's interacting with people, she was very campy and cheesy and over the top in the first game, and that's just kind of the way Bayonetta is. But I really like that it's a more subdued balance in this one, and I'm really appreciating that because, like I said, I've seen a lot of story bits from the game so far. What's really neat is it feels like the combat is much, much deeper. And it's tough to talk about if you haven't either played Bayonetta 2 or Bayonetta 1, but just the simple ability of when you hold your two different attacks, which is one is for your feet, or one is for your feet and the weapons attached to your feet, the other is for your hands and the weapons that you're holding, and you can hold those individual buttons and she'll like hold that position and kind of do some sort of special ability with the weapon. Usually it's the gun, so she's going to fire off a few shots from her feet or her hands when you do that. And that feels way more seamless to integrate into your combos and in the midst of chaos in this game than it was in the first game, which is great because that was one of the greatest ideas and concepts to Bayonetta as a character and the combat. And in the first game, that was one of the few things that didn't work wonderfully well. It works far better in this game. It feels very fluid, and it absolutely belongs in the midst of this fast, chaotic battle where you want to be like, button mashing and just going back and forth in this and combo, and you're moving real fast and you're triggering and you're dodging and then you're attacking and you slam the punch button 100 times, and it's totally different now. You can really have a lot of finesse when implementing these different combos and these different abilities just that the two main attack buttons give you when fighting, and I think that that's really, really cool. Also, the ability to okay, it seems like, all right, I don't know which area I want to go in. It seems like there's many more weapons to be able to pick from. I'm so early in the game. I'm only into chapter 5. I've been playing for a couple hours. I know there's a lot more to go. And I've already picked up, a few permanent weapons for myself. Even the weapons that the enemies drop that you can now use, they're just way better than the original game's weapons were. They just feel wonderful. They're really powerful. They're easy to use. Like it's harder to get lost in this game than it was in the first game. And I think that is, part of just the benefit of like the more solid design overall. Also, when you're, kind of choosing your weapon sets and what you're putting on your hands and your feet and which is your main weapon set and your secondary, it's just easier to comprehend. It's not like that much different than the first game, but it just makes more sense this time. I don't know. You'd probably have to play both games to know what I'm talking about, but it's a good thing for Bayonetta 2. Also, being able to put some of these weapons on your feet really adds an extreme amount of depth. I am like shocked how much you're able to do with this. It is way, way deeper than the first game, and putting the swords on your feet becomes one of the most effective attacks that you can do. And again, you have two different weapon sets. Maybe you gain the ability to have more down the road, but you can, two different weapon sets of your hands and feet, and being able to switch instantaneously between the two of them, which you could do in the first game as well, is just so fantastic. And just playing around with the combinations and what one weapon feels like when she's holding it and the other weapon feels like when it's on your feet. It's just insane. And then you add the fact that the Umbran attacks, when you get an Umbran meter, which wasn't in the first game, and now you can get these super attacks as you build up your magic meter. And then when you take that and add that to a weapon that could be one way on your hands or another way on your feet, it's like you've just like quadrupled the amount of things you can do with one weapon. And there's so many fucking weapons in the game. Like it's so cool. Like there is more depth and strategy to this as a balls out action game that I've ever played. And like I said, the game is definitely all the better for it. So one of the kind of negative things that I want to say, it's probably the only thing that I'm not totally in love with, but it's also not terrible. It's not like it's ruining the game. But the game is really story heavy, like I've mentioned a couple times. And honestly, in my opinion, for this kind of game, for myself, it's a little too story heavy. And now, I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out for a minute. Here's the thing is I love story-based games, and I love story in my games that I care about. And I do care about the story in Bayonetta. It's completely batshit nuts and very hard to follow. It was that way in the first game, and it's even more so here. But even though I still love story in a game like this, I don't want it to be too much, because this game relies so much on like the visceral action and like the way you get pumped up and excited and you're in the moment and you're fight, and you just go and it feels so good to fight. And all you want to do is just eviscerate hundreds of enemies at all times. At least myself, that's all I want to be doing. So I really would like it if the story was just barely smattered throughout the game, which the first one kind of was that way. And in this game, in these first couple hours, man, there is a lot of cutscenes in and out of every chapter. They're much longer and more involved than they were in the first game. So you're spending a lot of time watching cutscenes. And I'm assuming that might go away more and more, but I feel like I'm settled enough into the game and the story that I've got a pretty good idea of how it's going to go. And I think it's going to be consistent story throughout. And again, that's cool and I enjoy it and I like watching it, but at the same time, I'm like, I fight like 2 or 3 waves of enemies and then it stops for another cutscene. I'm like, no, I want to fight like 20 waves of enemies before I finally have to sit down for 2 or 3 minutes and watch a story. Like, I am like, usually by the time a story starts, I'm just not done fighting. I just want to keep fighting and getting more weapons and picking up more halos so I can buy cooler shit and have more weapons and add to my combos and my technique abilities. And it's like, oh man, all these story things, like I care, but at the same time, I don't fucking care. So just stop doing it, I don't know if that makes sense. It's definitely important for me to give you guys a distinction that don't think I'm crazy. I do love story in games and I do like the story in this game. What's being presented is fantastic. One thing I really like that they do in this that they didn't do in the first one is they use what I kind of personally dub the Uncharted technique, quote unquote, where you're kind of walking and talking with another character and they're doling out dialogue back and forth between each other in some of the slower moments, and some of it's very expositional, and I think that that's really cool. I love that in any game, and I'm so glad to see it implemented in Bayonetta 2 here. The introduction of the new character, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the introduction of the new character, the kid in the hood that you've seen from the trailer, pretty cool. I really like that guy. Luca's come back. I think that he's handled really, really well in this game too. There's a really solid amount of humor in the game I've seen so far, and I think it's just so cool. It doesn't hinder the game. It just lends to the kooky atmosphere that is Bayonetta. I think that's all wonderful. The couple of boss fights that I've done, Jesus Christ. Best boss fights ever, man. The fight that I just finished a little bit ago is probably one of the best fights I've ever had in any video game ever. And I'm, again, so early into this game, I can't even imagine what it's going to be throwing out. The enemy design has been bumped up significantly from the first game, which was already outstanding. Obviously, graphically, it's amazing. That's the other benefit here is we've jumped generations from last gen to this new gen, 8th gen, and damn it, like it's what the Wii U really is capable of doing is impressive, And again, I'm not a graphics whore, which is why this is like the last thing I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, make no mistake, it's a fantastic looking game. It's a really good showcase for a lot of people who may not understand what the Wii U is actually capable of, what this system can actually do. Nintendo and Platinum Games have done a phenomenal job pumping out ridiculous visuals for this game, and it's so rock solid at 60 frames a second. Excuse me. Only during some of the cutscenes does it dip a little bit, and it's only when it's the in-game cutscenes, not the pre-rendered ones, that the frame rate dips. But during gameplay, it doesn't matter how much crazy, batshit, nutty things are going on and how many people you're fighting, it will not slow down on you. It's so fantastic. The game's a little bit easier than the first game, I've noticed. I selected the middle difficulty, so maybe I just should have selected the harder one, but I feel like the middle difficulty here compared to the middle difficulty of the first one is just much lighter on you than it was previously, and that's, kind of good, kind of bad. I'm sort of muted on that. But it's just an observation. So, I don't know. I really just wanted to make this quick, almost 15-minute video just discussing a couple of the finer points in my initial reactions, in summary, I know this wasn't super in-depth or thorough. Sorry, guys, I'm tired and I'm talking too fast. So it's not super in-depth or thorough, but, at the end of the day, it's gorgeous. The gameplay is so much better, so much smoother. A lot more moves to your repertoire, a lot more weapons to play with, way more variety to how you're using your weapons. The Umbran Witch move set is just fantastic. Umbran Time, I think is what it's called. The story is a little bit too heavy-handed. There's a little bit too much of it, but what's there is still very good. The characters are handled great. Bayonetta is just like cooler and smoother than she's ever been. I really appreciate the new one here. And having to fight to go find Jean is great because, again, in the beginning of the first game, you kind of think she's your enemy. So it's a really cool thing to see them finally, being allies and working together here because they have a really long history, which, again, the first game teaches you. So I don't know. That's pretty much my thoughts, man. I freaking love the game. It is, as of right now, my game of the year. It is better than Destiny, which I know I'm one of the few people who loves Destiny, but I love Destiny to death. I'm pretty sure I like Bayonetta more than that. It's better than Mario Kart, better than Donkey Kong, better than Shadows of Mordor. It's just an amazing game so far. So there's a couple still really fantastic games I'm waiting for the end of the year. Obviously, Smash is the big one. Also, Sunset Overdrive, Master Chief Collection, Little Big Planet 3. So a lot of good Dragon Age. Jesus, so many good games. Evil Within is a really great game. So it's been a wonderful year for games. But right now, I think Bayonetta's sitting on top, man. She is the queen of gaming right now. There is nothing else that I can be paying attention to except for her and this game. So, yeah, so those are my thoughts. Tell me what you guys think. Have you been playing Bayonetta 2 or not? If you have been, what do you think? The more people talking about Bayonetta, the better. And I'm pretty much going to shut up and wrap it up here. But those are my general thoughts. All right, and that's it, of course, for today. Thanks for putting up with my kind of sick voice a little bit. I think I've just on too much medicine and been a little bit sick, and my throat's not feeling too awesome. So, it's kind of why I had to do a lot of cuts in the audio throughout this video, and why I'm probably talking too fast for my brain to be able to keep up. But ultimately, I think my points about my feelings of Bayonetta 2 ultimately came across. So, yeah, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, please feel free to subscribe to Review, like and share the video, and your comments and your thoughts about Bayonetta 2 below. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, I will catch you guys on the next video.